All right, everyone, welcome back. Here we are once again, sitting with the Ludwig Total Percussion Pad. At this point, we've unboxed it. We've gone through the 20 pre-programmed kits that are built into the unit, and we've also experimented with turning one of those built-in kits into something a little bit more customized to the types of sounds and the distribution of sounds that fits my personal taste and would be something that I feel like I could use. And so actually, we're still on that particular kit. Just as a reminder, it sounds like this. So what we did, as a brief recap of how we customized this, first thing that we did was we changed the way that the snare drum is reacting to the way that I'm hitting it. Originally, this particular kit has 2 snare drum samples programmed into this one pad, and they switch samples depending on how hard I hit. For this particular kit, we didn't want that, or at least I didn't want that. So what we did was we made it so that this pad is only reading the rim shot sample instead of the center sample. So every single time I hit it, it's going to sound like this. And that's whether I'm hitting it loud or soft. Other things that we did was we moved this specific crash cymbal sound from this pad where it was originally to this pad, and in order to do that, we had to program, in fact, 2 different crash cymbal sounds to be played simultaneously, and that allowed us to get this sound. We also moved the toms around a little bit, and in fact, we added 2 more toms. We added these toms are programmed to have a high, medium, and low. So we used those. That would be high, medium, and low. And what we did was we programmed a second pad with the high tom, and then we just pitched it up. So we added a higher tom, and same thing, we added another pad with the lower tom sound, and we pitched it down. So we added a higher tom and a lower tom. So now instead of having 3, high, medium, low, we have 5. We have higher, high, medium, low, and lower. What we're going to do right now is we're going to experiment with adding extra trigger pads to this unit. If you take a look at the overhead camera, you'll see that right here you have the option of adding 4 extra trigger pads, and it looks like the way that they are, the way they're setting that up inside of the brain of the unit is that trigger pad number 1 is going to take up channels 1 and 2. The second trigger pad is going to take up channels 3 and 4. Third trigger pad 5 and 6. Fourth 7 and 8. That doesn't matter so much. The best way to understand this is that you can plug up to 4 extra trigger pads into this unit. That's the way it boils down. So, in the spirit of Bear Grylls, let me get some extra triggers and we'll plug them in and see how we can do this. So I'm gonna give me a sec. I'm gonna get a trigger pad. Going to use headphones because they're easier to take on and off. So, this trigger pad here is a Roland V bass drum. I do happen to own a Roland V drum kit, so it makes sense that I would be able to pull this out. Now, what I'm going to try and do here is I'm going to attempt to take this bass drum sound and program it into this bass drum so that I can play this more like an acoustic drum set. So let's start by let's see what happens if I just hit this trigger pad. Okay, so immediately, well, first and foremost, I need to make sure I'm not hitting my legs on everything. There we go. Okay. I apologize for moving around so much. All right, so take a look at the top camera. You'll see that if I hit the bass drum trigger, this light right here will light up blue. So that means that the unit is in fact reading this trigger pad as an input. It just doesn't have a sound assigned to it yet. So let's go back to the pad menu, and I can see at the top it says Trig1, Trig1, and I can also see that wave A doesn't have anything programmed, and same thing with wave B. So that's why I'm not hearing anything, because there's no sounds assigned to this trigger pad. So if I hit the bass drum pad, the name is BDE underscore big beat. Let's see what number that is. It's number 73. Okay, so I'm going to hit the trigger, my external trigger pad, and I'm going to scroll down. 73. Okay, so now let's make sure these both should be the same sound. Those are the same sound. Cool. So now, if I go back, well, first I'm going to hit OK, and that will save this trigger pad as the bass drum. So now I should be able to either go or I should be able to go and get the same sound, although it feels different to play. It feels more like an acoustic drum set. So that's pretty cool. Now what else can I do? Now that I have this bass drum sound programmed, I'm noticing as I'm playing this, as I keep trying to play this groove, that a lot of times the really fast notes on the hi-hat are struggling to keep up. The unit is struggling to replicate that many samples at the same time. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to duplicate this hi-hat sound on this pad. So I'm going to have a snare drum in the middle and then two hi-hats. So let's see, what are we doing? 632 looks like. Okay. Once again, that's the same sound. So now I can go All right, so now it's starting to feel more like a real kit. Let me hit save before I go any farther. And now let's add a couple extra triggers and see what happens. Okay. Okay, so now we have two more trigger pads. The bass drum trigger is plugged into trigger inputs 1/2, and now we have 3 and 4, 5 and 6. Let's make sure they're registering. Okay, this one is registering on 3 and 4, and this one is registering on 5 and 6. But they, as of right now, don't have anything programmed into those triggers, so they're not actually making any sounds yet. So let's remedy that. What sort of sounds can we add? It might be fun to have this trigger take over as the crash cymbal there. So let's make that happen. Let's see. Wave A is 305. Okay, and wave B is 306. Okay, cool. So we'll hit save, and now okay, so that's now assigned to a crash cymbal. I wonder if there's a ride that would fit. Maybe I can put a ride right there. Let's try that. First of all, I'm going to do that. What I'm going to do is for this pad, if I'm turning this pad into a ride cymbal, the first thing I'm going to do is take away the second sound, because you remember that this crash cymbal sound is 2 crashes triggered simultaneously. So I'm going to take away one of the sounds so that I'm only hearing the ride cymbal. So that's wave B is now programmed so that there's no sound. Let's go back to wave A and experiment. Ooh. All right, I changed my mind. We're going with that sound. I like that. Actually, wait a minute. Is that 275? All right, 275 is getting programmed into this other trigger pad, and that way I have 2 crash cymbals. All right, I'm liking where this is going. Now, let me find an actual ride cymbal there. That's not a ride cymbal. All right, so I changed my mind once more, just based on the nature of based on the 808 nature of some of these other sounds. It might be cool to add some kind of scratching effect in there. All right, so that's pretty cool. There's one other thing that I'd like to experiment with here before we leave. At this point, I think you probably get the idea of you know, how to add sounds to these extra trigger pads. It's the exact same thing as trying to change the sound on any of these pads. The only things you need in addition are trigger pads, extra trigger pads, a stereo 1/4-inch cable, and all that means, I'm gonna unplug this briefly. If you take a look at the overhead camera, you see how this has 2 bands on it. Let's see. It's possible that the second one doesn't matter. Anyway, has 2 bands on it. It seems as though you could probably get away with it just having 1 band. But anyway, so you need a 1/4-inch cable. So you need an extra trigger pad, you need a way of mounting that trigger pad, and you need 1/4-inch cables. And you'll need that for every single extra pad that you want to try and add to your kit. But overall, it's a pretty simple process to get the trigger pads to interact with the Total Percussion Pad, and it's a pretty simple thing to add sounds to those trigger pads once they're plugged in. Now, there's one other thing that I'd like to mess around with here, and that's I want to try adding a hi-hat trigger, and we'll actually exit this built-in this kit that we've been editing. I want to see if I can get a hi-hat trigger pedal to be able to control the hi-hat on a couple of the built-in kits that are pre-programmed. All right, so we'll try Classic Maple. Give me 1 second. Ooh, that's pretty cool. Okay, so it's working. That's phenomenal. I have not actually tried this before now. So what I did, in addition to the 4 trigger pad external trigger pads that you can plug in, there's also 2 more plugs that are called pedal, and you can have pedal 1 and pedal 2. So what I did was I plugged this Roland hi-hat foot pedal trigger into pedal 1 on the unit, and as you can hear, it's controlling the hi-hat just as though I was playing an acoustic kit. So now this pad right here is the open hi-hat, and this trigger pedal is controlling this sound. So I can now go. So that in terms of the programming, what that means is that they have this trigger pad and this pedal 1 input linked together so that this sample will play until I press the pedal down. So now I should be able to, and they actually already have this external trigger programmed as the bass drum. Let's make sure that that is Yep, it's the exact same sound. Cool. So already I can just go. All right, cool. So that's really cool to know. So if you are buying just this unit, for example, let's say you live in an apartment and you're not allowed to have an acoustic drum set, or let's say that you're brand new to drumming, and instead of getting an acoustic kit, you got this as a present. Or if you're planning on buying someone one of these instead of buying an acoustic kit, and you want to give them as much flexibility to be able to play this as you could possibly give them, then right off the bat, it might be a good idea to find some sort of bass drum trigger. You don't need this one specifically, but some sort of bass drum trigger and some sort of hi-hat trigger. And at least as far as the built-in kit called CL Maple, which stands for Classic Maple, as far as that one is concerned, they've already programmed it so that right out of the box, if you plug the Total Percussion Pad in, you plug the bass drum trigger into trigger input 1, 2, and the hi-hat trigger into pedal input 1, then without having to do anything else, you can already play this more like an acoustic drum set. So that's really cool. Here it is again. So at this point, if you have the gear and you've gotten it to this exact point, and you're wondering what else you can do, at this point, what I would do next, I don't need the bass drum to be here anymore because I have the bass drum trigger, and so I would immediately start looking at figuring out what else I can make this pad sound like. And the other thing I would do is I would probably balance things out. It seems like the hi-hat is really loud in comparison to the snare drum, but we already have the second video in this series where we demonstrate all 20 of the built-in kits, and in there we talk about how to go about that. So we don't need to do that here. So anyway, that's a brief overview, or maybe a not so brief overview, of how to plug external triggers, including hi-hat triggers, into the Ludwig Total Percussion Pad and get them to interface such that you can extend your reach, which is pretty cool.